on my way to Calgary to meet up with my friend Bill, who was coming from somewhere out in the west of the United States. I camped one night. I think this was in Idaho, and it was a spectacular sunset. So just before going to bed, then I met him at the Calgary airport after waiting for about 3 days for his plane to arrive during an airline strike. We headed up to Canadian Glacier National Park in the Selkirk Range, and we hiked our way up toward Mount Sir Donald with the idea that possibly we could climb the North Ridge of Mount Sir Donald. It's a very challenging thing. I'm not that great a mountaineer, but the scenery was phenomenal, and we thought we'd give it a shot. The weather there is also very marginal. It rains a lot, and so the idea of finding a few days in a row where the weather was good enough to climb, we just took a chance and tried to go there. This is my friend Bill during a little rest stop. As we got higher, we got through the lush forests and into this high territory with melt off from snowfields and glaciers and great views of distant things. This mountain is very accessible because it's rather close to Trans-Canada Highway 1. There are trails that lead more or less straight up several things to the base of Mount Sir Donald. These were apparently put in place by explorers for the Canadian Pacific Railway. They were interested in getting up high as fast as possible, so they built trails that tended to go straight up. This is looking up the base, the west face of the more or less pyramidal-shaped Mount Sir Donald. There's a glacier coming down from it, and off to the right, we'll see higher views of this later, is the Illecillewaet Glacier. It was kind of a grunt getting up here, even on these trails, because they're non-existent switchbacks. They nominally went straight up. And we had to carry heavy enough packs to last us for a few days. But you do gain altitude fairly quickly, and you got to see some really spectacular views. This is a glacier, I believe, at the base on the west side of Uto. That's the next peak to the north of Mount Sir Donald. I believe this is Uto, kind of shrouded in the clouds here. As I pan farther to the east, this is the side of Uto going down into this. I'm standing on the col between the Uto and Mount Sir Donald, now looking pretty much eastward, and there's a pretty giant glacier that goes straight east from that col. And as I pan farther off to the right here, you'll see that, this is the view east and back to that same glacier. Now off to the right, we'll see the north ridge of Mount Sir Donald, and that would have been our route. That was our goal. Here's Bill again taking another little rest stop up on the col. It was quite windy there. And we get our first glimpse up the north ridge of Mount Sir Donald, and there it is. It goes up for about 3,000 feet on this ridge, and it's a scramble the whole way, I'm told. And not a technical climb, but it's very exposed. As soon as you get on this ridge, you see thousands of feet drop off on both sides. And now I'm panning toward the west face. Some people climb the north ridge and then rappel down the west-facing face. It's about 4,000 feet down, and there we see the toe of the Illecillewaet Glacier. We'll see that again later. But it's a really spectacular scene there, and you gain altitude enough that you have thousands of feet relief in all directions, and lots of snow and ice up there. Here's another time when we were up on that col, and you can see the wind is carrying the clouds up and over and then back down on the east side, so it's coming from the west, of course. And that sort of shrouded everything in this cold fog, and we later found that, of course, it deposited a fair amount of snow up there. So we weren't really willing to give the ridge a try in that kind of weather. So here I am for the first time, the guy in the blue parka, um, and pointing up to the summit of Mount Sir Donald that we were contemplating going up. Later, we decided that probably we weren't up to the task, especially in that kind of weather. So here's Bill again, looking up at that peak and wondering if that's a possibility for us. There's that north ridge. At least it's a little bit clearer now. You can see a little bit farther up, but it goes way up there. That 3,000-foot ridge is quite impressive. And here are the glaciers with the crevasses showing. I believe this is down in that same glacier to the east of Mount Sir Donald. This is the view to the west from the col, looking down fairly steeply down. I'm afraid the picture doesn't show it very well. In these pockets at the bottom of these mountains, they were always these big hollowed out places with gathered snow and ice. Again, I'm panning more toward the north now, looking at so I'm now up part way up that ridge. I decided to try going up a couple hundred feet on that ridge, looking back down toward the col. Now I'm looking from higher up, looking up the ridge. I was sort of taken by the fact that although the rock appears to be broken up, it's pretty solid. It's rather, I mean, I can see why people could rappel down the west face because this rock doesn't move that much. Although at other visits to this place during the rain, it rained down pretty good-sized rocks from that east face. So that's looking eastward now. Yeah, I was sort of just taken by the lichen-covered rock, and in spite of all the cracks, it's very stable for the most part. So I was kind of looking for obvious paths to go up that ridge, and there were several possibilities, but once you got up there, the only way to get down either was to rappel or to hand climb back down. Down climbing, that would be, I think, a lot worse than going up. And given the weather, that all made it not so nice. So this is a view off in the distance of the Illecillewood Glacier to the southeast of the col. To the right of that center of the picture, you see a lot of bare rock that has been scraped in the past. We'll see closer up of that. The glaciers left their marks on that rock. Again, this is looking about an 80-degree angle downward, and it's hard to see it from there. I was very impressed by how exposed I felt on that ridge on both sides. So I'm still up on the ridge, contemplating how much further I might want to go, especially with the clouds coming in and dropping precipitation up higher. Again, I'm looking down off the east face, almost straight down. It was very impressive to me at the time. Seemed very exposed. So here we are at a bit lower altitude, and the forests are pretty lush here. There's a lot of rainfall here, which makes it quite pretty. Here's my friend Bill again. It's quite pretty and full of water and lots of vegetation at the lower altitudes, but that large amount of precipitation makes it marginal as to whether or not you can climb in this area, although many people have climbed these mountains. You can see it's very lush alpine meadows, lots of wildflowers and greenery. Here we are in a little snack break, and we met a little friend, a little pika. They whistle like crazy in the mountains, and he was aggressive because we brought out some food, and he was totally unabashed and coming right up and trying to grab sandwiches out of our hands. This might be Eagle Peak. I think it's farther north along that same ridge line that is Mount Sir Donald is there now in the center. Uto, which is to the left of Mount Sir Donald, is probably hidden by the foreground cliffs. Um, but I believe this is Mount Sir Donald, having dropped more snow up there in those foggy days that we saw. Yeah, that is Mount Sir Donald. Off to the right, we have a higher view of the Illecillewaet Glacier and the snowfield called the Illecillewaet Neve. You can see where the lower part of it is scoured rock face, where the glacier had been in the past. Backpacking is hard here. This is the Trans-Canada Highway 1 in Rogers Pass, which is the easy place. There's lots of takeoff points into these higher mountains, but long distance backpacking is very tough there because everything is straight up. This is Eagle Peak again farther to the north on that ridge that contains Mount Sir Donald. The hiking below is relatively easy. There are boulder fields and so forth, but one can meander a fair distance off that ridge to the west of the ridge and make some time to see more sights. Again, here's Trans-Canada Highway 1 and Rogers Pass down below. These would be very remote mountains, the Selkirk Range, if it weren't for that Trans-Canada highway going through here that makes it very easy to get to. As we descend down below the tree line now, we're in much more sort of tangled forest with lots of water and stream crossings. None of them was a particularly hard problem. More difficult ones, I think said earlier, there was a fixed rope that helped you across one of them. We took a little hike on another day farther to the south, and this is down by the toe of the Illecillewaet Glacier. This is that exposed rock with all the scratch marks and grooves from the earlier glacier flow, and up above is the continuing ice and snow of the Illecillewaet Glacier. Here we are taking another little rest stop. Not sure if Bill's feet got wet on a stream crossing, but we checked our feet frequently. We saw no one else during the whole time we were up here for a few days, and it's quite remote, and that's kind of pleasant. lower altitudes, you get the mosses of the deep forest with lots of rain, ferns and mosses all over the place, very lush. There was a sign of some human intervention with the cut tree there. Nice big rivers that, or major mountain streams like this, that crossing would have been very difficult. I don't remember what the story was on whether we had to cross this or not. I don't think we crossed it in the water for sure. I wouldn't want to venture forth into this. It's kind of not by me crossable easily. This is Chateau Lake Louise. On our way finishing up our trip, we stopped at Lake Louise and took a hike up the shore that we've gained some altitude on here. It takes you to a nice tea house on this side, and we went to that. I didn't get any pictures of that, but this is another beautiful area, much more touristy. But again, it rains a lot, and you can see why it became a tourist attraction. It's a very attractive place. So this was a pleasant end to our unsuccessful climb of Mount Sir Donald, but on the other hand, we had a great time, saw some beautiful sights.